October 26, 1942. At 9:10 in the morning, the first bomb struck the deck of the USS Hornet, beginning an ordeal of fire, explosions, and kamikaze attacks that would leave her a floating wreck. By nightfall, her crew was gone, and the carrier drifted alone, a ghost on a dark ocean, awaiting her end. For decades, what happened in those final lonely hours was known only from conflicting battle reports. Until now. A remote vehicle has finally rediscovered her silent tomb, 17,500 feet down. The images returned are stunning, showing a warship scarred but intact, a time capsule of her last battle. How did a ship so catastrophically damaged manage to stay afloat for over 10 hours? And what does the unique pattern of damage on her hull reveal about the final, brutal attack that at last sent this legendary carrier to the bottom? The answer lies in what naval architects call distributed survivability, a revolutionary design philosophy that transformed the USS Hornet into one of the most resilient warships ever built. High-definition footage from remotely operated vehicles reveals a honeycomb of watertight compartments, precisely what her designers intended when they drafted her blueprints at Newport News Shipbuilding in 1939. Dr. Robert Ballard, deep-sea explorer and discoverer of numerous historic shipwrecks, explains that what we are seeing in the wreckage is nothing short of extraordinary. The Hornet absorbed catastrophic damage that would have sent most vessels to the bottom within minutes. Instead, she fought on for hours, a testament to American engineering and the determination of her crew. The damage pattern tells a story of remarkable endurance. The flight deck bears the scars of at least 6 direct bomb hits, each penetrating deep into her structure. Her port side reveals the unmistakable gashes of torpedo strikes, not just from Japanese aircraft, but astonishingly from American destroyers tasked with scuttling her, when abandonment became inevitable. What the wreck reveals most clearly is that the Hornet's damage control systems worked far better than anyone could have anticipated. Even with multiple compartments flooded, fires raging across 3 decks, and her power systems failing, the ship's fundamental integrity remained intact. She was, in essence, too well built to die easily. Perhaps most telling are the 2 massive ruptures near her stern, signature wounds of Japan's feared Type 93 long lance torpedoes. These ruptures confirm the devastating final blows that helped send her to the deep. These weren't attempts at mercy killing by American forces. These were precision strikes by Japanese destroyers who encountered the abandoned carrier adrift in the darkness, determined to claim the glory of sinking America's most famous warship. Naval historian James Hornfisher says the evidence is clear. The Hornet did not just survive 10 hours of punishment. She actively resisted destruction until the very end. Her designers would have been both proud and astonished. The story of USS Hornet begins on the drawing boards of American naval architects who foresaw the coming importance of carrier warfare. Commissioned on October 20, 1941, just weeks before Pearl Harbor would transform the strategic landscape, she represented America's investment in a new form of naval power. At 827 feet long, with a displacement of 25,500 tons, she was a floating airfield capable of launching nearly 100 aircraft. Her steam turbines could drive her through the water at over 33 knots, fast enough to outrun any battleship. Every aspect of her design reflected the lessons learned from 20 years of carrier development. Naval architect David Livingstone explains that the Hornet was built for a war that America wasn't yet fighting. Her armor protection, her anti-aircraft batteries, her flight deck layout all reflected the latest thinking about how carriers would fight and survive in the coming conflict. Her captain, Mark Mitcher, was one of naval aviation's pioneers, a man who understood that carriers would replace battleships as the decisive weapons of naval warfare. Under his command, the Hornet became not just a warship, but a laboratory for tactics that would redefine naval combat. The industrial might behind her construction was equally impressive. Steel mills in Pennsylvania, electrical components from Massachusetts, engines built in New York. The Hornet represented the mobilization of America's industrial capacity. Over 3,000 workers labored for 18 months to bring her to life, installing 700 miles of electrical wiring, 1,500 telephones, and armor plate thick enough to stop most bombs and shell fire. What we often forget, notes industrial historian Dr. Melissa Chen, is that these carriers represented a manufacturing achievement as impressive as their military capabilities. The Hornet contained more technological innovation than any other weapon system of her era. Within months of her commissioning, the Hornet would make history in a mission so audacious that even her designers had not contemplated it. In April 1942, 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers crowded her flight deck. Army bombers never intended to launch from a carrier. Their mission was to strike Tokyo itself in what would become known as the Doolittle Raid. The raid was militarily insignificant, but psychologically devastating to Japanese morale, explains military historian Dr. Craig Simons. It proved that Japan's home islands were not invulnerable, and that American power could reach the Emperor's doorstep, and it forever marked the Hornet as a primary target for Japanese vengeance. That vengeance would be delayed at the Battle of Midway in June 1942, where the Hornet's aircraft helped sink 4 Japanese carriers, turning the tide of the Pacific War. Though her air group suffered heavy losses, the victory established her reputation as a ship that altered the course of the war. By October 1942, the strategic situation had grown desperate. The Hornet stood as the only operational American fleet carrier in the South Pacific, defending the critical Allied foothold on Guadalcanal. The Japanese combined fleet, determined to reverse their fortunes, deployed an overwhelming force to hunt her down. Pacific War expert Richard Frank says, "The Japanese knew exactly what they were looking for." The distinctive silhouette of the Hornet was unmistakable to their reconnaissance pilots. She represented American resolve in the South Pacific, and eliminating her would leave ground forces on Guadalcanal critically exposed. On October 26th, radar operators aboard the Hornet detected the approaching Japanese strike force, over 90 aircraft inbound from 2 enemy carriers. Despite scrambling her fighters, the numerical advantage was overwhelming. At 9:10 in the morning, the first bomb found its mark, and the Hornet's final battle began. Survivor accounts, now validated by the wreckage evidence, paint a picture of incredible chaos and courage as the Hornet absorbed punishment few ships have ever endured. Radioman Second Class Thomas Kruger recalled in a 1995 interview, 3 bombs hit in rapid succession. The first penetrated the flight deck near the bow, the second struck amidships, and the third hit near the island structure. Within minutes, aviation fuel was burning out of control in the hangar deck, and we lost electrical power to most of the ship. The damage was catastrophic, yet the crew fought on. Damage control parties, trained to handle exactly this scenario, sealed compartments, battled fires, and struggled to maintain the ship's vital systems. For a brief period, it appeared they might succeed, as the fires were partially contained and some power restored. Then came the torpedo planes. Gunner's mate Stanley Johnson remembered that they came in low and fast from the port side. Their 5-inch guns were still operational, and they shot down 3 of the planes, but 2 torpedoes hit below the waterline. That was when the real flooding began. The torpedoes struck near the engine rooms, flooding critical machinery spaces and causing a severe list to port. Power failed completely, fires spread unchecked, and Captain Charles Mason faced the decision no commander wants to make. At 1:30 in the afternoon, with the ship dead in the water and unable to launch or recover aircraft, Mason gave the order to abandon ship. 882 men went over the side into the shark-infested waters, rescued by escorting destroyers while their home burned behind them. But the Hornet's ordeal was far from over. What happened next reveals the most extraordinary chapter in the Hornet's story, one that could only be confirmed by examining her wreck on the ocean floor. Underwater archaeologist Dr. James Delgado explains that the evidence shows American destroyers fired at least 9 torpedoes at the abandoned Hornet. It was standard procedure to scuttle a ship rather than let it fall into enemy hands. But remarkably, many of these torpedoes either missed or failed to detonate properly. The American destroyer Mustin fired 7 torpedoes, with only 3 hitting and 1 failing to detonate. The destroyer Anderson fired another 6 torpedoes, with only 2 striking home. Even with 5 torpedo hits, the Hornet remained afloat, her compartmentalization containing the flooding to manageable levels. Captain William Thompson, a naval engineering expert, says that what we are seeing here defies explanation. By all rights, those torpedoes should have broken her back. Instead, they created flooding that her passive damage control systems actually contained. The ship was literally designed too well to sink easily. As nightfall approached, American forces were forced to withdraw due to approaching Japanese surface ships. The abandoned Hornet drifted in darkness, a ghost ship still refusing to surrender to the sea. Japanese destroyers Makigumo and Akigumo discovered her after midnight. After confirming no American forces remained aboard, they fired 4 Type 93 long lance torpedoes, weapons far more powerful than their American counterparts. 2 struck home near her stern, finally compromising enough internal compartments to overcome her remarkable buoyancy. At approximately 1:35 a.m. on October 27, 1942, the USS Hornet finally slipped beneath the waves, taking with her the remains of 140 sailors who had given their lives in her defense. For nearly 8 decades, the exact location of the Hornet's final resting place remained unknown. Her sinking position recorded in wartime logs. In January 2019, the research vessel Petrel, funded by the late Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, deployed to the waters near the Santa Cruz Islands with a mission to locate the legendary carrier. Using advanced side-scan sonar and autonomous underwater vehicles, the search team methodically mapped over 800 square miles of seabed. Robert Kraft, the expedition director, says that finding a shipwreck, even one as large as an aircraft carrier in over 3 miles of water, is like finding a needle in a haystack. He says they were working with fragmentary historical records, complex underwater terrain, and the knowledge that the ship could have drifted miles from her recorded sinking position. On January 31, 2019, at a depth of 17,500 feet, the sonar revealed an unmistakable silhouette, the distinctive outline of a Yorktown-class carrier sitting upright on the ocean floor. High-definition cameras confirmed what history had long waited to reveal. The USS Hornet had been found. The images transmitted to the surface were breathtaking. Her flight deck, though damaged by bombs, remained largely intact. Her island structure stood proudly, still bearing the scars of combat. Most remarkably, her hull showed the precise pattern of damage that finally explained how this magnificent ship met her end. Dr. Emily Jatef, a maritime archaeologist, says what strikes her most about the wreckage is how intact she is. Despite bombs, torpedoes, fires, and the crushing pressure of the deep ocean, the Hornet still looks recognizably like herself. She is a time capsule. The discovery of the Hornet carries significance far beyond satisfying historical curiosity. As a war grave containing the remains of 140 American servicemen, she represents hallowed ground, a memorial that the United States Navy treats with profound respect. Rear Admiral Samuel Cox, Director of Naval History, explains that these are not just fascinating archaeological sites. They are the final resting places of sailors who gave everything for their country. The discovery allows us to properly honor their sacrifice and provide closure to families who never knew exactly where their loved ones were laid to rest. For naval architects and engineers, the Hornet's condition offers validation of design principles that continue to influence modern warship construction. Her compartmentalized hull, redundant systems, and armored vitals all contributed to her remarkable survival through hours of punishment. Perhaps most importantly, the discovery provides the final chapter in a story of courage that defined America's early war effort. The ship that launched the Doolittle Raid, that helped turn the tide at Midway, that fought to the very end at Santa Cruz, can now be properly remembered and honored. Historian James Hornfisher reflects that the USS Hornet did not just sink. She fought a hopeless battle against overwhelming odds, absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser ships in minutes, and remained defiant to the very end. In many ways, she embodied the American spirit in the darkest days of the Pacific War, battered but unbowed, refusing to surrender until the very last moment. Today, the Hornet rests in the eternal darkness of the deep Pacific, beyond the reach of light and time. Yet through advanced technology and determined exploration, her story has returned to the surface, a testament to those who built her, those who fought aboard her, and those who ultimately gave their lives with her. In finding the Hornet, we have not just located a shipwreck. We have recovered a crucial piece of our national story, a monument to courage that will inspire generations yet to come. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey to the USS Hornet's final resting place. If you enjoyed this exploration of naval history, please subscribe to Ocean Attacks for more deep-sea discoveries and untold stories from beneath the waves. Hit the notification bell to never miss our next underwater adventure. Until then, Remember that history's greatest secrets often lie in the darkest depths, waiting to be revealed.